Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. A Russian court sentences a visiting U.S. soldier to nearly 4 years in prison, accusing him of stealing and making threats of murder. North Korea and Russia have signed a new agreement. They're pledging to help each other if either of them are attacked. Jack Bradley reports. The first named storm of the hurricane season, Tropical Storm Alberto, has formed in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. What it's bringing to the Texas coast. Some students won't be able to use cell phones at school starting next year. A Los Angeles school district approves the ban as Governor Newsom calls for statewide action. Online shop Temu linked to a group of former Chinese Communist Party officials. More on the international concerns about the app, which sells cheap Chinese goods. And climate activists in Britain spray orange paint on Stonehenge. It comes a day before huge crowds are expected to gather at the site to mark the summer solstice. Cities across the U.S. are breaking decades-old temperature records this week. A massive heat wave is covering the central and eastern parts of the country. Roughly 80 million people from Indiana to New England are under a heat advisory or excessive heat warning. Officials are cautioning the hot weather could turn deadly. Chicago registered 97 degrees, breaking a record set in 1957. Detroit and Philadelphia and cities in New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Maine are also due for record temperatures in the coming days. Central Maine is running 30 degrees above average. Here in New York, state parks will be free today and on Thursday to help residents beat the heat. Governor Kathy Hochul said sprays and misters are being added to several sites in the city, and several beaches and pools are temporarily open ahead of the regular season. And next, Tropical Storm Alberto is now the first named storm of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. The National Hurricane Center reported that Alberto is now producing 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds as it makes its way towards Mexico's eastern Gulf Coast. The storm is about 300 miles south of Brownsville, Texas. It's already generating bursts of heavy rain and storm surge along the coast. Experts are predicting an intense hurricane season, largely due to the warmest ocean surface temperatures on record. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts between 8 to 13 hurricanes this year. Of those, 4 to 7 could hit major hurricane status, which is Category 3 or higher. And a new clemency program became official in New Jersey today. Governor Phil Murphy signed an executive order that changes how his administration issues pardons and commutations. During a ceremony honoring Juneteenth, Murphy says his new system will be a more thoughtful and fairer approach to help people get second chances.
Today, I am honored to announce that our state is reaching a major milestone in our own journey, not only for racial justice, but justice for every New Jerseyan.
Under the new order, those with certain nonviolent convictions may get their pardon considerations expedited. That is, if they have remained free from justice system involvement for sufficient time. It also creates a clemency advisory board, the first of its kind in New Jersey history. It will review each clemency application and make suggestions to the governor. The governor says the goal of the new initiative is to remedy inequities in the criminal justice system. And over on the West Coast, students in Los Angeles Unified School District will have to revert to passing handwritten notes in class. Board members there voted yesterday in favor of banning cell phones while school is in session. The ban is scheduled to start in January, and it will affect more than 500,000 students from kindergarten through 12th grade. Those in support of this move say cell phones can negatively impact in-person communication, creative thinking, and mental health. Critics of the ban say students should have access to their phones, especially in case of an emergency. Board officials have a few months to update the cell phone policy, which has remained the same since 2011. It will then be presented to the public. And President Biden's latest executive order has opened a new pathway to citizenship. It makes it easier for some illegal immigrants who are married to citizens to apply for permanent residency and eventually citizenship. For more on this new immigration policy, we're joined by NTD News contributor Mike Leon. He's the Policy and Strategy Director of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of the news commentary podcast, Can We Please Talk? Mike, great to have you on. So, Mike, regarding Biden's new executive order, to begin with, what has changed and how did things work before?
Well, Steph, good to see you first and foremost. You know, another executive order, I feel like I was on a couple weeks ago talking about the other one that kind of capped the amount of asylum seekers in a day that could be seen at the border. It's good to see that the president is actually starting to take this issue serious and starting to use the H word, which is humanize, and I like to say about all of these folks that are here. And so what is going to happen with this executive order, as you know, Department of Homeland Security is going to start taking actions for non-citizen spouses and children so that they can remain in this country, not have to leave the country while the trial is happening, you know, their asylum trial, et cetera. In order to be eligible, though, you would have to have resided in the U.S. for at least 10 years and be married to a U.S. citizen, a legal U.S. citizen, right? So we saw protections during the Obama administration for DACA kids, for the childhood arrivals and those children of undocumented folks that come into this country. Now we kind of see President Biden piggybacking off of that. It's a little unclear how some of this stuff is going to play out, and I've spoken with an immigration attorney on some of that front in terms of DHS having a little bit more control on this and things like that. But for now, this will protect at least 500,000 or north, including the children, the 50,000 or so children. It will protect those folks so they won't have to leave this country while they wait to understand if they can be allowed to remain in the country.
Right, and you've outlined some of these, plus the fact that it's a little unclear at the moment. But from your estimation, what are some of the potential benefits and drawbacks of the latest action?
Yeah, so, and again, I just spoke with an immigration attorney as we were recording for our episode, an immigration attorney back in New York that deals with a lot of the asylum trials, right? And Steph, when you and I talked about the legislation that Congress could have passed to kind of help with the backlog of the immigration courts and things like that, some of her concerns were not met so far. But the biggest concern that she outlined to me was removal proceedings, right? Like in terms of, can you open up a removal proceeding for somebody that's remaining in the country and make it easier for them to get on the pathway to citizenship? What about somebody with a criminal record, whether it be a felony or misdemeanor? That was addressed in the Obama administration under the DACA Act. Like, it's not addressed necessarily, or at least outlined in this executive order. And then obviously DHS, you know, we've already been talking about how the border, the crisis is really overwhelming the system, right? Too many people, not enough people to deal with them. Well, now DHS is going to have to deal with these individual cases, and this could increase the spike load of that. And the other part of this was that I found interesting that she outlined for me was really around DACA college graduates and the ability to get a job and get qualified for a visa, but it has to relate to your major. So if you don't get something in your field, let's say you graduated in business, right, but you get, you know, a job offered in marketing, could you still apply for this visa? It's a little unclear of some of those things with respect to this executive order.
Okay, hopefully more details become clearer soon. Next up, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has welcomed the action. He said that he would work with the administration on work authorization for more than 200,000 illegal immigrants who have come to New York City in the past 2 years. Do you think that this forecasts more updates in immigration policy following the executive order?
Yeah, you know, obviously, you know, I'm a New Yorker, Steph, at heart, and born and raised and stuff like that. And now I live in Florida. But, you know, Mayor Adams, the one thing that I will give him kudos is wanting to work with the administration on this, because let's be clear, 1.8 million foreign-born workers as of 2023 reside and work in New York City, right? So a large part of New York's labor workforce comes from, you know, immigrants, right? And so I think it's very smart of him to mention that and say that he wants to work with the administration. Obviously, he has also voiced his concerns about some of the other things that have played out with respect to other migrants that have come there waiting for their asylum trials and how New York City is housing that. And that's put a burden on the taxpayer. But I think it's smart of Mayor Adams right now to kind of extend an olive branch, being one of the biggest cities here in the union, saying that, hey, you know, we want to work with the Biden administration on this executive order and how it'll help our economy.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes on this for sure. Many developments to come. Thank you so much, Mike Leon. Great to hear your thoughts.
Thanks, Steph.
A U.S. soldier detained in Russia has been sentenced for theft and making threats of murder. According to a Russian state news agency, U.S. Staff Sergeant Gordon Black will have to spend nearly 4 years in a Russian penal colony. Russian authorities arrested Black last month. He had traveled to Russia to visit a woman believed to be his girlfriend. Black was accused of stealing a little over $100 from the woman. He was also accused of assaulting her. State media reports that Black partially admitted to the theft, but not to charges of threatening to kill the woman. The court handed down a sentence of 3 years and 9 months. His lawyer said today Black will appeal. And the U.S. government has repeatedly warned American citizens not to travel to Russia. As Russian President Vladimir Putin is wrapping up his trip in North Korea, meeting with Kim Jong-un, they're pledging to strengthen their ties. They've signed a new security agreement promising to help each other if either is attacked. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now. Jack, what does this deal mean?
Well, it means that they'll come to each other's aid if they're ever attacked. But the contents of this deal, Steph, are still unclear. They're calling it the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, and they're aiming to strengthen their military and economic ties. And keep in mind, this is amid sanctions on both of the two countries. And the deal is drawing international attention. The U.S. and its allies are concerned that North Korea, its continued supply of weapons and ammunitions to Russia in exchange for economic security is continuing. And Russia's economy and military, keep in mind, though, are mostly supplied by China, the Chinese regime. And this was reiterated yesterday by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Watch.
Putin's visits to North Korea demonstrates and confirms the very close alignment between Russia and authoritarian states like North Korea, but also China and Iran.
We are very much concerned about this because this is what's keeping the war going. And the fastest way to end the war is for Putin to be disabused of the notion that he can outlast Ukraine and outlast all of Ukraine's supporters, but also if he knows that the fuel he needs for his war machine won't be there anymore. So if China in particular, which professes to have a strong interest in ending the war, if it really means it, it will stop fueling the war machine and we'll continue to do everything we can to cut off the support that countries like Iran and North Korea are providing.
Now, keep in mind, this marks Putin's first visit to North Korea in 24 years. After North Korea, Putin's heading to Vietnam and meeting with its leaders there. And this shows that Russia's facing this international isolation, and it's being pushed to seek assistance from other authoritarian regimes. Steph, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Jack. Next, former Chinese Communist Party officials are now working for a popular Chinese shopping app. That's Temu's parent, PDD, a Chinese e-commerce giant. Here's that story.
A recent New York Post report found a bevy of former Chinese officials are taking senior positions at PDD. Posts range from the company's vice president to public relations executives. Chinese media revealed that between their salaries and company stock revenue, the new hires are taking home millions of dollars every year, with some positions even topping tens of millions of dollars. Data from 2023 shows that Temu has over 80 million active users in the U.S. The app calls the U.S. its largest market. But the Temu parents' close ties to the Chinese regime are causing concern. They've left many wondering, can Beijing access data on the app's U.S. users? Based on Chinese law, all companies in the country must hand over data whenever Chinese authorities ask for it. Temu has seen remarkable growth in the U.S. market since its U.S. launch 2 years ago. Its rapid expansion has even become a threat to American online shopping giants like Amazon.
The Colombian Navy intercepted more than 2.5 tons of cocaine in an internationally coordinated sea operation. They made 4 arrests. The officers pursued the boat in Caribbean waters as it headed for Central America. The 4 crew members were arrested, 3 from Nicaragua and 1 from Costa Rica. Colombian naval forces seized almost 2 tons of cocaine from that vessel. During a parallel operation coordinated with Panamanian investigators, another large cocaine shipment was recovered after a high-speed boat chase. Authorities said the two busts yielded a haul with a market value of over $79 million. And environmentalists in Britain sprayed the Stonehenge with paint earlier today. Online video shows orange marks covering the prehistoric megalithic structure. Local police announced that 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of damaging the ancient monument. In a video released by the environmental group Just Stop Oil, 2 protesters were seen running towards Stonehenge's megaliths. They spray painted the stones as another person attempted to stop them. Just Stop Oil wants the British government to end the extraction and burning of oil, gas and coal by 2030. The group has previously engaged in other disruptive environmental protests, including shutting down major roads and disrupting cultural and sporting events. And when we come back, Paris mayor said today tourists should feel free to visit the capital despite political tensions. This as the nationalist group gains momentum in polls, and some experts are concerned about protests. And high-tech companies in Silicon Valley are trying to protect their intellectual property from Chinese spies. The U.S. intelligence community is sending out strong warnings. That and more after the break here on NTD News.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Chief Division Counsel and DOJ have approved a no-knock breach. We want the subject to be on display, doing the walk of shame, full visual impact. Any questions?
Are we becoming a police state? We don't need to have a crime. What we need is a person to look at. And then we go find out what crime you did.
FBI! Our focus is shifting. Our main priority as a bureau is going to be domestic terrorism.
Really paints anybody who's right of center.
If you're a pro-life, pro-family Catholic, they define you as radical.
These are anti-government.
We have freedom of religion and freedom of speech.
Violent extremists, and they must be dealt with. We can do anything we want.
Polls in France show a likely win for the nationalist group in the snap parliament elections in 3 weeks, a scenario that's raising concern the potential for violent unrest by the opposing political parties, including the left-wing group. According to some media reports, French police are gearing up for possible riots in the country just 2 weeks before the start of the Olympic Games. NTD's international correspondent David Vives has more.
Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo sought to calm public concerns about security today during a press conference as the city prepares for the upcoming Olympic Games.
I want to tell all of our friends abroad who have questions, are worried and wonder what is going on in France, what is going on in Paris. I say, come visit. This is a place where we are going to carry on breathing democracy and freedom.
The announcement comes after President Emmanuel Macron's unexpected decision to organize a snap election for France's parliament, a reaction to his party's defeat by the nationalists in the European Parliament elections. However, the nationalist group has been projected to win this new round of elections by several polls published during the past week. And the win for Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National Party, or RN, is likely to stem unrest in the streets from other parties, notably the left-wing group. Former senior editorialist at Figaro, Yvan Youfol, says if RN wins the election on July 8th, this is a probable scenario.
If the nationalists win these elections, some parties are ready to take to the streets on July the 8th to contest them with violence. We know very well how this is going to end. Some people from the left wing have no respect for democracy. It's an obvious scenario that could also put off a good number of voters, because with the Olympic Games coming up, there's a real risk of urban riots happening.
Some members of the left-wing party has already called for unrest, he says.
In Avignon, there is a candidate running for office who has 3 S cards and is calling for street violence, violence against the police, and who is calling for the results of the ballot box to be contested in the event of an RN victory.
According to information published in the media outlet JDD, police forces are preparing plans and material to mobilize after the second round of parliament elections on July 8th. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And back in the U.S., tech firms are strengthening their security and employment protocols in the wake of threats from foreign nationals. American intelligence officials are particularly concerned about the increase in spying from China. Financial Times reports that people who work with tech firms OpenAI and Google say the companies are increasing their vetting process of current workers and potential hires. U.S. intelligence officials have escalated their warnings to companies about the threat from Chinese espionage over the past 2 years. A former Google software engineer is facing federal espionage charges for allegedly stealing AI trade secrets while secretly working with 2 China-based companies. In another case, a former Harvard professor was convicted of accepting bribes from the Wuhan University of Technology in China. And staying with education, students are gearing up for summer break, with some preparing to start college in the fall and others entering their senior year, facing decisions that could shape their futures. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with author and college admissions advisor Andy Lockwood on navigating this crucial process. Let's watch.
Alrighty, welcome to tonight's webinar.
Andy Lockwood and his wife Pearl run Lockwood College Prep, a New York-based advisory firm helping students get into college from as early as 9th grade. Lockwood explains that many people mistakenly equate brand name colleges, like those in the Ivy League, with value.
But the plain fact of the matter is that number one, there's no correlation between where you go and how successful you are. And number two, both anecdotally and statistically, how many people do you know who went to these elite colleges, but they turned out to be, pretty unsuccessful financially or in other ways that you define success.
The college coach says there's lots of data for return on investment for colleges, like College Scorecard, which tracks salaries.
But I think what they all overlook are kids' efforts that they've got to put in, their inputs, not the output that the college is somehow magically going to provide for you. But I'm talking more specifically about what kids do to improve themselves by getting internships, developing real life skills along the way, in addition to getting good grades and performing well academically. I think that you can major in almost anything and get a return on investment out of it, provided that the child puts in the efforts.
But to ensure that a student feels driven to put that effort in, isn't it important that they feel passion for their field of study?
I'm a big believer in not following your passion in terms of that being the be all and end all. You've got to be able to make a living. And I think what creates success and passion, or at least enthusiasm, is if you pick a skill that's going to help you succeed in life and you get better at it and you accomplish things and you get feedback and you realize that you're impacting people.
When considering college costs, Lockwood highlights that most private colleges offer significant discounts.
The average discount for a private college is it's more than 56%. That's average for starters. So that helps with the return on investment when you're getting a solid liberal arts education.
Knowledge is key to obtaining financial assistance and lowering college costs.
There's also even more merit-based aid, and that getting that money to discount you and help you with that return on investment. And so identifying generous colleges and identifying that subset of those colleges that will be generous to your child. And the discounts are out there for sure.
Lockwood also reveals that colleges will negotiate financial aid offers, especially as housing deadlines approach in early May.
So the best defense is a good offense. Having multiple offers in your hip pocket to be able to use to play colleges off against each other is one of my favorite techniques to use. And we saw a lot of action in that time period where colleges were coming back and offering more money, sometimes without even asking.
Andy Lockwood is the author of several books on college admissions, including How to Negotiate Your Crappy Financial Aid and Merit Aid Offer, available on Amazon. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
All right, thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. See you tomorrow.